This is PTV World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali and you're watching Fault Lines. The diplomatic relationship between Pakistan and United States remain strained. The recent visit of United States Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman to Islamabad and New Delhi was a major development, a major diplomatic development in this region. This was the highest delegation coming to Pakistan in the current United States administration. One of her statements got a lot of attention and concerns in Pakistan, where she said that her visit was for a specific and narrow purpose. We do not see ourselves building a broad-based relationship with Pakistan. It is very unfortunate that the United States cannot stop viewing Pakistan from the spectrum of Afghanistan. In the backdrop of this visit on 27th of September, there was a bill presented in the United States Senate by 22 senators together. The bill was aimed as an effort to make Pakistan slightly responsible for the United States' catastrophic failure in Afghanistan. While we talk about all of these issues in today's program, watch the report prepared by my team before I bring my first guest to the program.
The Pak-US bilateral saga weathered myriad geopolitical storms over the course of enduring partnership between two countries, spanning over 70 years. Pakistan has always accorded due importance to its vital relationship with superpower, and in its uphill road to relentless diplomacy, Islamabad facilitated smooth US drawdown by bringing Taliban to the negotiating table. In the aftermath of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, many questions have arisen with specific regard to Pak-US ties against that backdrop of unpredictable outcome of Afghan war. Marking high-level diplomatic engagement with Pakistan, US Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman visited Pakistan to discuss regional and international issues, particularly Afghanistan. During an exclusive interview on PTV News program Shahrai Dastoor, Wendy Sherman expressed appreciation for Pakistan's efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan, saying that it should be very proud of 42 years of helping Afghan refugees, and the US as well as the world was grateful for that. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi underscored the significance of cultivating sustainable broad-based partnership between two countries for promoting economic cooperation and regional peace. It is pertinent to mention here that Deputy Secretary Sherman's visit follows the recent meeting between Foreign Minister Qureshi and US Secretary of State Blinken on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. As robust adherent of diplomatic pragmatism, Islamabad vociferously urged the US and its Western allies to maintain engagement with interim government of Afghanistan to avert humanitarian crisis and combat the hydra-headed scourge of militancy. Ironically, it was Pakistan's pivotal endeavors which led US President Joe Biden to declare during his UNGA address that US is ending a period of relentless war in Afghanistan.
My first guest in today's program is Pakistan's ambassador in the United States, Dr. Asad Majid Khan Sahab. Doctor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Shabbat. Thank you for having me.
Doctor, how are the diplomatic relationship between Pakistan and United States, and what are the major developments that you see since we last met in June 2021 at your office?
Well, I think the state of the relationship, it has always been an important relationship, and we clearly see that the frequency of engagements is picking up. The foreign minister had his first physical meeting with Secretary of State Tony Blinken here on the sidelines of the UNGA. And this meeting actually followed the two interactions that our National Security Advisor and the U.S. National Security Advisor had both in Geneva and here in Washington, D.C. And Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman's visit also was a sequel to those engagements and interactions. So going by what we see in terms of the frequency of these engagements, clearly both sides feel the need to engage with each other and to work together cooperatively and collaboratively to address the challenges that we face together.
Dr. Khan, on 14 September 2021, at US IP you spoke and many newspapers in Pakistan quoted you from that meeting. You said Pakistan monitoring Taliban's commitment of human rights. You also said, we want Afghan territory not to be used against any country, including Pakistan. This brings us to a very important question. Afghan's government is in shambles at the moment. Their economic lifeline has been cut by the United States. What comes first for international community? The humanitarian issue of Afghanistan or these international commitments that the United States is pressing for?
Well, first of all, I think you're right in pointing out that Afghanistan faces a grave, potentially grave humanitarian catastrophe, and things are likely to go from bad to worse if the international community doesn't come forward. The UN-sponsored donors conference did result in over $1.2 billion of pledges, including the United States also coming forward to pledge humanitarian assistance and support. But clearly, I think time is of the essence. There are countries that have reservations in terms of how far they can engage or how far they should engage. And our point of view and perspective is that, Taliban are a new reality, and it is important for us to engage with them. It is critically important to avoid a humanitarian catastrophe because it would then affect all of us, because Pakistan, being the immediate neighbor, is likely to see refugee influx, because if things go from bad to worse, particularly with impending winter, all of the neighbors are going to see more refugee influx, and this is not going to stay only in the neighborhood. I think this would go beyond. And obviously, when the rate of the government, whichever government is in Kabul, basically dissolves, then it leads to the same cycle that we have, seen play out in the past, where you will have ungoverned spaces, and this could likely result in terrorist cases. And so that essentially makes it a common priority for all important players. And for that reason, Pakistan has always maintained that it is a shared responsibility for all the countries. We've been supportive of engaging the neighborhood. We've been supportive of working with China, Russia, and United States as part of the Troika Plus mechanism, only to make sure that we are able to basically exert a positive influence on the new government in Afghanistan, and to engage them in a way that we could incentivize good behavior on their part in terms of their own commitments and for the good of the people of Afghanistan. Because at the end of the day, if things really get out of control, it is the Afghan people. And unfortunately, they have seen so much suffering over the past 40 years, and it has to stop. And this, we feel, is the time for that to stop.
Khan, I agree with what you said, but at the moment, the humanitarian crisis is exacerbating in Afghanistan. The winters have almost approached, and the United States is so far talking only about the issue of women's rights and international commitments made in the past, whereas in Afghanistan, in absence of a formal economy, everything is in shambles, including their banking system, including their economy, including their governance. Now, don't you think this situation requires a much needed humanitarian intervention first, as United States has remained actively involved in Afghanistan for 20 years, and to put all of these things beyond winters or beyond a reasonable time frame? Don't you agree with me on that?
No, really. I think that's, as I said, that time is of the essence. We see that U.S. has made a commitment to provide humanitarian assistance. We also see that the U.S. Biden administration has engaged with Taliban in Doha, which is a kind of a first formal engagement between the new government in Afghanistan and the United States. And I'm sure in those exchanges, all these elements must have come under discussion. But I agree that, we, or international community, need not wait to go in with humanitarian support. That is urgently needed. And whereas some of the other priorities that countries have can be part of the conversations that we can have with Taliban in the days and weeks ahead.
Ambassador Khan, there was a statement by the U.S. Deputy Secretary Wendy Sherman that she has given in Mumbai. And I'm going to repeat this, what she said. She said it's for a very specific and narrow purpose. We don't see ourselves building a broad-based relationship with Pakistan. And we have no interest in returning to the days of hyphenated India-Pakistan. Now, this statement was given while she was in India. And when she came to Pakistan and this was being questioned by one of the journalists, she did not respond to the statement. What do you concur? What do you take out from this statement, being a diplomat and being more privy to the situation right there in Washington, D.C.?
Well, frankly, I think I would much rather depend on and rely on what we hear directly from her in our formal official interactions. I would much rather depend and rely on what we saw her tweet when she was in Islamabad. I would much rather depend on what she said to our media and journalists in our interaction here. And there, clearly, I think she did speak of the global and regional challenges that we need to work together. She did speak of the long-standing partnership, important relationship that both United States and Pakistan have, and also in terms of what basically these. Just a second, Shahad.
Ambassador Khan, let's go forward. On 27th September. Sir, please continue what you were saying.
So what I'm saying is that I would much rather depend on the official statements that we hear from the U.S. side, and not off the cuff remarks made in gatherings. So for us, that really is the measure and yardstick of seeing where the relationship is and how the U.S. side is looking at this relationship.
We are now talking about this bill that was presented in U.S. Senate on 27 September. 22 Republican senators moved this bill, and you know about the details. Tell us how threatening or how scaring this is for a country like Pakistan that has played a major role in settling this Afghan dispute for the United States. Is this something of immense concern, or is this a normal practice that keeps going on? Many bills come and go. How do you view it as a diplomat in Washington, D.C.?
First of all, let me say that there are many views. If you go through the media here in the United States, you get to read and see all kinds of views, and then this also reflects a certain point of view here in the United States, which is just a point of view and not policy. First. Secondly, I think if you look at the bill more closely, it actually does not make any determinations or make any basically final comments on the status of things, but it essentially raises questions. And those questions are yet to be answered by the administration. Thirdly, this is a bill which is only signed by Republican legislators, and we know, and I'm sure you are also well aware, that all of this, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the circumstances in which this withdrawal took place, and President Biden's approach is coming under severe criticism here, even in the United States. And even in this bill, there is language which is extremely critical of President Biden. So how far this is going to be accepted by the Democratic majority, which basically is the side which is going to decide whether the markup is to be made or not. And in the U.S. Congress, there are all kinds of bills that are brought up for consideration, but only a very, very small number of those legislative proposals actually see the light of the day at the end. So I would say that I would not really see this translating into policy. But yes, I think from the perspective of this being having been signed by a number of senators, it does reflect a certain point of view and a perspective here in the United States, which we need to take seriously, but not necessarily with a lot of concern.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Khan, for being a guest in my program. It was such a pleasure to speak to you. We'll take a break and join back with the second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the second segment of the program, I have with me Mr. Zahid Hussain, a famous, reputable author, very well-read expert of foreign policy affairs. He's also a well-known international journalist and author of a recent book, though he has written many books, but the recent one is No One War. Zahid Sahab, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Zahid Sahab, we're today talking about United States relationship with Pakistan in context of the developments in Afghanistan. In your view, what do you think United States is trying to do at the moment with Pakistan? Is it actually trying to gain anything out of the situation that is created in this part of the world, or is just trying to make Pakistan a scapegoat to avoid the public pressure that they have after wasting successfully $2 trillion of public exchequer?
Well, I think for last many years, Pakistan and U.S. relations were largely actually on the focus only on Afghanistan, and that's how United States has seen Pakistan because at the end actually for fighting its war in Afghanistan, and also at the end the main objective of the United States and the main focus of the relationship between the two countries, and particularly for the United States, it was Pakistan's help to exit Afghanistan. Now the situation has changed completely. after the exit of American forces there and return of Taliban government in Afghanistan. But there is always actually need for resetting of the relationship because the relations between United States and Pakistan, which emerged after 9/11, had had certain strategic value. But later on, we have seen it turning into a transactional relationship where America's interest was largely in Pakistan was to get help on Afghanistan. But there has also been some divergence of views on that issue. Pakistan had from the very outset had been telling America that there is no military solution to Afghan problem, and they should talk to Taliban, and there should be a negotiated settlement. It happened ultimately, but now the things have changed completely, uh, and the United States, yes, actually, that's a big humiliation for United States in Afghanistan, because after 20 years of war, one can say that they have not won this war, and there has been a lot of debate going on in the United States that what has been the causes of that loss of that war, and certainly a lot of criticism on American policy and how the war was conducted. And I think probably that's this. There also, from certain quarter, there is also blame game going on. Some of the senators or even officials blame Pakistan for the U.S. debacle. And I think we should get out of this situation. It's also in the United States' interest to move on and not actually see things in what happened over the last 20 years in Afghanistan. I think there's a need for resetting of the relationship. Pakistan should not expect United States or to have a strategic relationship with the United States because of the changing geopolitics. The priority of for Biden administration foreign policy option has also changed hugely. American focus in Asia is largely actually on China, what they call containing China's interest. So I think that has changed the whole geopolitics, and there's also need for in Pakistan to uh, to have uh, to have some kind of rethinking on the situation. We cannot harp on this
Have
one thing
written
that we.
Zaid, you have written a lot about this issue of terrorism and militancy, both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. And now, looking at the situation as a critic of US foreign policy, do you believe that United States is actually looking for a stable Afghanistan? Or do you believe that the situation at the moment is hinting out that United States is deliberately creating an economic chaos in Afghanistan to further destabilize the region?
Say that. I would not say that United States is deliberately trying to destabilize Afghanistan. That is not in this. Instability in Afghanistan is not only a threat to the peace for the region, but also to the world. And I think probably one could see that a kind of lawlessness in Afghanistan, instability in Afghanistan, will give a space to the terrorist organization. And no country would like to have that situation. Yes, actually, that at this point of time, there are certain factors. There is a huge domestic pressure in the United States. And I think probably for them, actually, it's not so easy to recognize the Taliban government. But it will also be in their interest to have some kind of contact with the Taliban. We have seen the latest meeting in Doha for the Taliban leadership. So it is not like actually that there's a move to completely isolate the Taliban government. Certainly, there are certain concerns in the international community, but but one can say that Pakistan and United States still have some convergence of interest in Afghanistan. I think that should be the basis of at least the relationship between the two countries. But it is Pakistan which always have the burnt of whatever happens in Afghanistan, and any instability in Afghanistan, any lawlessness, any threat of a civil war in Afghanistan will directly affect Pakistan. That what we have seen in the past. So I think
So
probably
Zahid Saab, I'm sorry, I'll cut you here. So how do you see the convergence of this relationship, as you rightly mentioned? What will now this relationship be more like between Pakistan and United States? Because Pakistan's role has slimmed down a lot ever since United States has left from Afghanistan.
I think one cannot expect Pakistan to put pressure on Taliban and to persuade them to whatever kind of government the other countries want to. But Pakistan still has some role to play because it's still very close to Afghanistan, and it has maintained a kind of active interaction with the Taliban government. And I think one should also understand that we should not actually raise the expectation of the international community that we can get everything done there. I think that should not be the impression one should create or try to give this impression. And I think probably at this point of time, the United States and other countries expect Pakistan to do something in Afghanistan, what they want, actually, like for inclusive government, and also inclusion of women in the cabinet and giving rights to women. Well, actually, this is concern may be justified, but one cannot expect Pakistan or any other country to bring the change from outside. So I think probably Pakistan should make it very clear. Yes, actually, they have huge interest in Afghanistan's stability because it will have a direct effect on Pakistan. And there is also need for humanitarian support for Afghanistan. And one should not do research, should do push Taliban to the position where there is also there's a threat of collapse of the government, and that will allow the terrorist groups to take ground. And we have already seen what's happening in Afghanistan. Daesh is very active there, and Daesh actually poses a real threat for regional countries as well as for Pakistan. And I think probably these are certain issues where the international community should work together to bring some kind of stability in Afghanistan.
United States keep repeatedly bringing the matter of the air corridor or the use of kinetic force in Afghanistan in all the diplomatic conversations. Do you think this is a plausible option for United States to keep using the kinetic force in Afghanistan? Or do you think they only use these terminologies now to exert more pressure, to put Pakistan under more pressure?
Then it's interest of international community to use a force in Afghanistan. We have seen actually what happened last 20 years. Use of force will not actually solve any problem. As far as some concerns of the United States is concerned, is basically is valid. Like, for example, if the activities of certain terrorist group, but with Daesh and others, and so one can understand that concern. And Pakistan and United States have been cooperating with each other on counterterrorism issues, and that may continue. But it does not mean that United States should use force in Afghanistan, and I think that will be disaster if they do so. I don't think the United States would need a base for its forces in Pakistan. That has been clarified by our officials also that there has never been any as a demand, and because America does not need bases to be operated, and I don't think the America would like actually to get involved militarily in Afghanistan. They have left Afghanistan, and the way they have left Afghanistan is must be a lesson to them.
Raisa, from our conversation so far, I find you quite concerned about the issue of Daesh in Afghanistan. How serious of a threat do you believe it is for the Taliban who are now in the government?
It may not be a major threat, but certainly is one of the any terrorist organization. They may not have the public support there. Daesh does not have the kind of support, the popular support in Afghanistan to pose any threat to the Taliban government. But it has the potential. The terrorists always have potential to destabilize the society. And that's what exactly we have seen over the last few days. Also, you must have seen actually Kunduz bombing, where 50 people, more than 50 people were killed. earlier there has been a terrorist attacks in Kabul, and so they will. It will that if the situation remains unstable in Afghanistan, that will provide greater space to this kind of terrorist organization. I'm not saying that have the capability to pose any serious challenge to the authorities in Kabul, but they can create a lot of nuisance, and that's one of the concerns of the regional countries. Like, for example, Russia has also this kind of concern. Iran has this concern. China has also this kind of concern. And I think one of the bases of the Doha Agreement, United States, was also that Taliban will not allow Afghanistan's space to be used by any terrorist organization to attack any country. So I think probably the countries would expect Taliban to counter that. And I think as far as Daesh is concerned, there is no question that Taliban will fight it out. But provided actually that things settle down there is stability in Afghanistan.
Zaid, the relationship between Pakistan and Taliban, do you find it becoming increasingly uncomfortable or difficult with each passing days? Afghanistan is now moving toward a greater crisis, as you know, the economy as well as the health situation, COVID, and now the winter approaching. Today, it's raining in Islamabad, it's raining in Peshawar, and I think it's also raining in some parts of Afghanistan. So, do you believe with the harsh weather conditions, with COVID pandemic, and with all the economic sanctions that they have, the relationship between Pakistan and Taliban can become difficult?
I don't think should affect Pakistan's relations with Afghanistan. One thing is we should be very clear that we should treat Afghanistan as a state, and our relationship should be with the state at the state level. Our relationship should not be a particular group or party, and we should not give this impression because. But certainly, Afghanistan's major problem at this point of time is economic. 97% of the population is still living below the poverty line, and that is the biggest problem of Afghan people are facing. The other thing is that for over the last several decades, Afghanistan's economy was largely dependent on foreign aid. We know actually the previous government, 75% of budgetary requirement came from United States and other donors, Western donors. And now the situation is that actually the foreign exchange have been frozen by the United States. So that will create a lot of problem for Afghanistan to run even the day-to-day government. And the situation was not right even when before the Taliban. People government officials did not get their salary regularly. So now these are the challenges. As far as the relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan is concerned, I think what we should not do actually we should refrain from giving this kind of statement, which shows that we are trying to control the government in Kabul, and that would be disastrous. And some of the statement coming out from Islamabad, from the cabinet minister, is uncalled for. They should not actually give this kind of impression or create this kind of impression that is Pakistan's victory in Afghanistan. And that will also, it would not be liked by the Taliban, leave aside the international community. Taliban will not like.
This is a very pertinent thing that you've just pointed out. Pakistan is of the view that if this problem is not sorted out, Pakistan is the country that is going to face the maximum brunt of this Afghan problem, and therefore Pakistan is the front runner in this entire process. So you think this is more damaging than doing good to us?
No, I'm not saying that. Pakistan should do everything to help Afghan people. And that's what we have been doing because we cannot be aloof to whatever happening in Afghanistan. We have actually 2,500 kilometer long borders with Afghanistan. So as far as the humanitarian aid is concerned, we should support and we should try to also persuade the international community to continue giving humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. And I think most of the international countries are actually in favor of doing so. But if given that actually, the Taliban need to do much more actually to firm up their economy, because at the moment we don't expect the international community providing the same kind of aid and funding as they did actually to the previous government. So Pakistan, I think yes, Pakistan should keep an active interaction with Afghanistan and with the Taliban government there. But one should also be very clear that we should treat Afghanistan as an independent state, and that and accept the fact that they should run the government, and they should this up to them whatever kind of government they want to run or have. But one thing also is not a, we should also Pakistan along with other international community have also been trying to persuade Afghanistan to accept the rights of women, allow them to go back to school, allow them to come to the working place, because human rights issues are not just confined to one country; it also affect the the public opinion in the Western world and other countries. I think probably that some of the concerns are common actually. But as far as Pakistan, China, Iran, and even to some extent Russia have maintained an active interaction and with the government, and that should be like this. But as far as the recognition of Taliban government is concerned, Pakistan should be very cautious about this. We cannot actually unilaterally recognize the government. Yes, we should go along with the regional countries, and I think that should be the best way. We should be very clear about Afghanistan policy, and I must say again that any kind of a statement emanating from Pakistan will harm the relationship not only with the government in Afghanistan but also with other countries. And that is a great. I think probably we really want to see the stability in the region. We should work with the regional countries, and that is the way forward.
And Zaid how fruitful have been the efforts done by China, Russia, and other Central Asian republics in context of this diplomatic crisis of Afghanistan?
Well, actually, they want actually stability in Afghanistan. All those countries, we have seen that, but one should also not. One should also see their concern because all these countries have borders with Afghanistan, and whatever happens in Afghanistan will have direct impact on these countries too. So I think probably some of their concerns are valid about Taliban's policy, but they have also made, unlike Western countries, they have maintained some kind of interaction with Taliban. But other countries too are interacting with Taliban. They may not have recognized that, and they may not recognize this in the near future. This government, but certainly all the governments are interacting with the Taliban government. But Taliban should also understand that it is not this is not the world they rule. There is not Afghanistan that rule. They rule in 1990s. They need to show some flexibility. They should show like Afghanistan is a multi-ethnic country, so it is in their interest to have an inclusive government. If they don't have inclusive government, they cannot bring stability to Afghanistan. And similarly, actually, they cannot take Afghanistan backward. They had whatever happened in Afghanistan 20 years, but one should recognize the fact that millions of Afghan children have been going to schools and other our education, getting education. They are the greatest. They have much a wider experience of the world. They have better exposure of the world, but you cannot actually take them back to the to 20 back to the to the socially sense. By not allowing women to work will not bring stability in Afghanistan. If you don't allow women to go to school, you will be harming Afghanistan's interest.
Thank you very much.
Because
Thank you very much, Zahid Saab. We are running short of time. Thank you very much for being my guest in today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, the diplomatic crisis between Pakistan and the United States will remain Afghan-centric. Pakistan, nonetheless, is playing an imperative role in solving the Afghan problem. But it's time for all other countries, including the United States, to take concrete steps. Otherwise, a great humanitarian crisis is inches away from Afghanistan. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah.